take the prerogative of the chair. It's one of the reasons why we like to have Mark Russell on public television, or used to have Mark Russell on public television. Very important. But I have to tell you a story about Mr. Furnival. I met him, I knew him at the Rangoon Home for Waifs and Strays, which was an orphanage run by Professor Gordon Luce, who was the eminent historian on the Pagan dynasty. But, Mr. Ambassador, you don't know this, but I wrote a private email to one of your ministers suggesting that Furnival and Luce be honored by your government because they were the first Burmese nationalists in the 20s. They were for Burmese independence, and they were kicked out of the country by General Ne Win. And I thought, if the government did something to sort of rehabilitate their international reputation, it would do wonders for your government, at least in academic circles. I'll just have a couple of comments here on what people have said, because I think it's important. Civil society is very, very important, quite clearly. But remember that civil society as a positive force, some people said the US cavalry coming to the rescue of societies when they're in trouble, is not viewed that way in parts of Asia. China views it as basically anti-state. And so when the United States government provided grants to a couple of Burmese NGOs that then demonstrated against the Myitsone Dam that China was supporting, China then blamed the United States for this problem. And so this becomes something that we have to consider when we talk about some of these activities. I agree that the minority issue is the central issue facing the country. As Priscilla said, it's the central issue since independence. UNU did not solve it. Ne Win made it worse. The juntas made it worse as well. And now this government is trying to do something that is very positive, but it is, no matter how many incidents there are, less is better, obviously. There are whole questions that are not resolved. What do you do with the Wa state, for example? There may be no incidents, but that doesn't mean that there's going to be some sort of solution to what role they will play. The question of democratization. We have a feeling. Now, we say democracy, we mean one thing, and therefore there's a lot of talk in the press these days about backsliding, and then the Washington Post and the New York Times, about backsliding from democracy. But this is nothing that the Burmese have ever talked about. They have talked about an adjectively qualified democracy, which is a disciplined, flourishing democracy, which may not necessarily be what our definition is. It will be something that the Burmese will develop according to their own needs and their own acceptance. So this becomes an issue. I think we should remember what Ambassador Mitchell said about the lack of trust in the society. It affects everything. In other words, aside from in sort of small-scale activities related to Buddhist temples or pagodas, there's really very little social capital, as we would say in the academic sphere, in that society. And that is a real problem. We see it being diminished in the United States by professors like Putnam at Harvard writing recently. But in Myanmar society, this is exceedingly important. And Frank, you talked about the issue of accountability, and yes, but remember there is this get-out-of-jail-free card in the Constitution that says nobody can be tried for activities that they committed in the previous government under official duties. So, yes, a reconciliation commission or review or some sort of ending to this trauma that has existed in the past is maybe necessary. Well, we have a few minutes. Let me. Okay.
Maybe they'll resolve it with meditation.
From the floor, questions, please. Address them to any of the panelists.
They're all waiting for Senator Webb.
Please.
Thank you very much, Richard Koo, MCA. There's been a lot of talk about the ethnic divisions and conflicts and negotiations, formal negotiations, and protecting rights within the Constitution. But how about some of the religious differences? I was wondering if you could speak a little bit on that topic. Thank you.
Let me just take a first cut, again, wearing my former hat at Amnesty International. I don't think we've touched nearly enough so far today on the situation in Rakhine State, although I missed the first panel this morning and it may have been touched on then. But left unaddressed, issues of statelessness and the religious strife between Muslims and Buddhists in the country, left unaddressed, I think this has enormous potential to undermine all that the people of Myanmar are seeking to accomplish. Ceasefire agreements, promotion of peace and stability, foreign investment, rule of law, confidence in the government, transition to civilian rule, and indeed, left unaddressed, if the violence were to grow worse, you have a ready-made excuse for the military to lose confidence in the process of transition to civilian rule. Good afternoon, Senator Webb. Yeah, welcome. So I think that it needs to be addressed, and it was the one issue when I was in Hong Kong with our young civil society leaders from Myanmar. When I raised it, I was surprised by the extent to which they differentiated rule of law questions everywhere else in Myanmar from the situation in Rakhine State, that they considered to be absolutely unique, a question of illegal immigration in their minds, and not a question of minority rights. So I think many people in Myanmar probably share that view. I think it's a mistaken view with respect to Myanmar's obligations under the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and also Myanmar's own history. But I'd be curious what others have to say about how this very difficult issue can be addressed in terms of promoting interfaith cooperation and confidence between the Muslims of Rakhine State and indeed other parts of Myanmar and the Buddhists and Christian and other populations.
Last year, we tried to buy that small plot of land, and I was asking to this Shan farmer. The first question he asked about is, are you a Muslim? The second question he asked is, are you going to sell it to the Muslim? So that the religious intensity between Buddhist and Muslim is very pervasive. It's all over the country. And when there was a 2007, like a saffron revolution, some of the organizations in the United States, including NAB, were supporting these monks activists inside. At the time, I articulated my concern. We have to be very careful about supporting monks, political activists in Myanmar, because they are entirely once they are now, you're supporting them because they become anti-government, but they can also be anti-diversity. And what we are seeing is a lot of these monk activists are also very active in this 969 movement as well. So this is one of the predicaments in Myanmar in addition to that ethnic conflict that we.
There's not only a predicament in the country, but it has international relations implications, because clearly the United States, the UN, and a whole bunch of other countries are really concerned about the Rohingya issue, who are the most deprived group, I think, in Asia. And unless something is done, there's always going to be that problem related to having normalized relations with Myanmar, unless there's some equitable kind of solution made. Right now, in An election year, that doesn't seem possible. Last word, so.
Get my 2 cents in here. Things I want to say. First of all, picking up on the monks, the radical groups within the monks, they have gone against Aung San Suu Kyi. They are calling her a Muslim lover. They do not want 59F changed in the Constitution because they don't think that anybody with foreigners in their family should be running the country. And they've come down on the side of the government party and USDP. So they're also demanding seats. Similar to their colleagues in Sri Lanka, seats that would be assigned as the military seats have been. So you can see that some of the radical elements coming out of the society really have nothing to do with civil society itself. On the question of the Rohingya, I think that we're being unfair, that the international community is unfair by burdening Myanmar alone with this problem. They are stateless. They are not received anywhere. They have citizenship nowhere. Why is nobody doing anything about Bangladesh? They are exiles or immigrants wherever they are. They're in Saudi Arabia, in Bahrain, in Malaysia, Indonesia, all over Asia. They don't have status, and I think that it is eventually going to require an international solution. I don't think the whole solution should be placed on them.
I think they are two imagined communities. The imagined communities among the Rohingya are, we've been here forever, and therefore we should be citizens and participate. And some of them have been there from the 16th, 15th, 16th century. And there's evidence of that. On the other hand, the government says they're all illegal immigrants, and therefore they shouldn't be here at all. And that, again, is another imagined community. And unless these two imagined communities can somehow come to grips with a real humanitarian crisis, I'm afraid that we are in trouble. Let me end there and thank the panel. Thank you all for listening. Let's turn to Senator.